Welcome to the Mobile Ecosystem Forum podcast, Perspectives in Mobile, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges in the mobile industry. In this special episode, we dive into intelligent conversations, RCAs for telecoms. This episode is supported by Infobip.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Perspectives, the podcast for the Mobile Ecosystem Forum that looks at a different vision, with different ideas, with different people that are making up these ecosystems. Now, we do cover a lot of different topics or ecosystems as well, as we like to talk about. But today, we're going to the core of a lot of the discussions that are here at the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. We talk about messaging, and not just messaging, the innovation part, if you want, the product element of messaging. And we do that with Dave Boddington, the group product manager and digital channel group, I should say as well, for Infobip, one of the big names in the market of CPaaS. Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining us here at Perspectives.
Hi, Gary, and hi, everyone. Thanks, Chris, for us meeting.
Well, it's great to have you, your vision and expertise, because I'm looking back at your career. It transpires how much you've been working on this. You are one of the true experts that have, you go your roots and your existing activities, all that still shouts the potential to use mobile in enterprise communication. So based on all of that, I need to ask you, where is it going? Are we at the beginning of something important? Is it maturity? What is conversational channels? What does it mean for an enterprise right now?
No, yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's very kind of you to say. I think mobile has always been about engaging with consumers, whether that be actually from one person to another person, but as we talk about here, from a business, a brand to a consumer. And as you say, conversational has been it's been a buzzword for quite a while. There's been conversational commerce, conversational retail, etc., conversation engagement. And realistically, there's obvious reason for that, right? We know that consumers want to be engaged on mobile. Yeah, I think probably every single one of our PowerPoint presentations has a slide towards the start that talks about how consumers want to be engaged on mobile and how their propensity for talking to brands is higher when they have good mobile conversations and good mobile engagement. But as you say, what does that mean and where are we? In reality, from my perspective, I think it's a continuum. In reality, I see as being an evolution of where we were even 10, 15 years ago. Mobile messaging has always had its peaks and troughs of interest from brands and interest from consumers that, as the technology, as consumer adoption, as the devices themselves have evolved. Where I think it becomes really quite interesting right now is dare I say, where we start to kind of weave in another one of those maybe more recent buzzwords, which is AI. That becomes really interesting. I think to date, whether it be messaging or whether it be looking at voice, for example, looking at kind of Alexa skills, for example, that conversation interaction between a brand and a consumer has always been quite challenging because of its kind of procedural nature, and it's very kind of logically driven. So it hasn't had a humanization to it, which is where AI comes in, and actually I think brings a real benefit in the ability to interpret what a consumer wants as easy as possible, but also give the consumer back a response as easy as possible. If you try and, as a consumer, as a user, as a person, typically you judge your interactions with anyone or any brand, any person with how you interact with another individual. And I want to be able to say to a shopkeeper, I would like a pair of shoes in this colour to fit size 9, and I want to say that in a sentence. Conversational experience haven't been able to deal with that thus far. Whereas you layer on AI, that becomes really interesting. The ability to take a human input and interpret it and provide a human output, I think becomes really interesting. But I do also want to kind of take a step back also and think about, what that means as part of messaging in general, right? Because if we look at the volume of messaging, and you'll know probably is far better than I do, right? In terms of that huge volume of messaging that exists right now. What is it? How much of that actually could be or is conversational? It's quite a small proportion right now. Vast majority of messaging one way, or maybe one way with reply. So I think we need to also couch our conversations in a sense of essentially pragmatism and a sense of reality about what conversational can bring. What are the right places for it? We can often be guilty of trying to shoehorn a really cool, shiny thing into something that it doesn't need to be. Mobile's done that for years, frankly. We've all seen it. So I think, as ever, the strength in a really interesting technology when it comes to using its application. So using it in the right way, at the right time, in the right place, and recognizing, importantly, where it needn't be used. And that doesn't mean those kind of more standard, more simple interactions can't become richer, can't be more engaging. I think that's really where also there's real interest right now is how we can take that more prosaic or kind of standard messaging, how we can elevate that. And that might be into a conversation engagement, but it might just be into a richer one-way engagement, for example.
Interesting. And I think I'm going to steal something from Infobip on our website. You talk about intelligent conversations. And it could be a great title for a podcast. Unfortunately, not one I might be able to
you have to find some intelligence.
I might have to, cut myself out of that. But the AI and the conversation channels together, very powerful. But the pragmatism that you bring as well is not everything needs to be a conversation. Sometimes it's a one-way, and it can be very happily a one-way thing. Let me ask about some of the other things that are happening out there that are equally either very exciting or sometimes in the history gone up and down. But you personally, as in Dave Boddington, I should say, you have been associated with RCS and RBM because you've been there, almost evangelizing, and a lot of things are happening in there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's probably a significant proportion of my I was going to say my work right now, but it's probably my life right now at the moment. RCS RBM because, as you say, I often refer to it as the oldest new channel because the reality is RCS RBM has been around a long time, but it's really only been picking up. There's been a real kind of surge of interest over the course of the last 6 months, a year. I think we all know why. What has catalyzed that interest? Because it's always been there. RCS has been there's been real hotspots of activity and volume and success in the channel. But the challenge today has really been scale, and it will be. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. I'll touch on that point a bit later. But yes, RCS RBM. I refer to it as RBM. It's something that's to always say RCS RBM every single time I reference it. RBM absolutely catalyzed by Apple's announcement. I think Apple was never expected to announce support for RBM or RCS. Indeed, I think probably in the week before it was announced, I spoke to one of my colleagues and said, I really don't expect this to happen for, at least not for the next year or two. And lo and behold, literally within a week, I was proved wrong, which maybe says, I don't know, more about the ecosystem or more about me. I'm not sure. But it's a massive flip for where RBM is firstly now, but more importantly, where it will be and can be in the future. I think it's something that I believe probably the most significant milestone since Google committed to the channel. I think let's not overlook the role that Google has and is playing in terms of that technology backbone to the industry and to the channel. But it's really driven that surge of awareness and interest in the channel. And whether that translates to messaging in the near term or the medium term or the longer term, it's in the public consciousness and in the enterprise consciousness, which is going to be really interesting. Looking at beta versions on iPhone, you're sending a message from an iPhone to an Android user, you see the phrase text message RCS in your inbox. So everyone will see that phrase RCS. It will be in the public consciousness. It won't be something that just raises question marks with individuals, and that translates to businesses. So, where individuals are aware of something, enterprises, brands, businesses, small, medium enterprises, as well as the large, will have awareness of this channel. So that's really interesting. I think it's a real shot in the arm for the channel. RBM, is only going to grow. And I think realistically from any number of conversations that I have with enterprises, they're really interested. But there's more questions than answers right now from business, particularly about how they can really leverage it. But also interestingly from telcos. What's undeniable is they see that it's going to become the de facto standard for telco messaging. And I think that's really, really interesting and really, really exciting. So 2025 is only going to get busier as far as RBM is concerned, for sure.
And for transparency, if you're listening to this podcast, we're recording in August, and every day almost counts here because Dave, you just shared some screenshots on social medias on LinkedIn, I believe, of how things are really happening right now. And in the next few weeks, we're going to get more of those questions. So there's the area to be looking at. And you say 2025 is your view of when things are really going to hotten up. But something is already hot, I would say. And Infobip doesn't just do SMS or RCS, but the known telco messaging platform, which globally would be WhatsApp, but there are many others. Let's talk about WhatsApp. How is that comparing there with the SMS and RCS world? Is it as innovative? Have things are as exciting? Is it growing faster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting. Whether that be looking at the pure over the top, the OTT digital channels, however you want to refer to them, those non-telco messaging channels, of which, of course, as you said, whilst that will be the preeminent, but it's worth also recognising there are, whether that be more regional or local channels by Line, Kakao, Zalo, etc., brands can effectively use to communicate and engage with their consumers. But exactly as you said, I think looking at WhatsApp, it's certainly the preeminent, certainly in terms of scale and coverage across multiple markets in multiple regions. It's interesting drawing that comparison because just touching very, very briefly back into the RBM world, one of the strengths of RBM is its richness in this OTT life. But also one of its strengths is the fact it is a telco channel, and we'll touch on that maybe a little bit when we talk about some of the broader considerations. But actually, that also brings some challenges or some downsides, and so there's always a balance when a business is looking at what channel to use. WhatsApp, ultimately was conversational. To pick up on that point from earlier, that was conversational from the get-go. Very much focused on supporting both A2P, but also user-initiated interactions and looking at customer service and support for brands and businesses. And of course, it's really not easy, really straightforward onboarding from a business that already has a business account with Meta, with Facebook and the like. So there's really nice integration to the other elements that a business has that isn't necessarily messaging. So I think it really does benefit from that kind of integration to other elements of like other brands or businesses kind of operations. Uptake is certainly, to a certain extent, market dependent. It certainly has real scale, but there are some markets, even North America is a good example where actually it's primarily about consumer kind of willingness. If you look at LATAM, where having a business communicated to you via WhatsApp is absolutely expected. India, much the same. It's expected and encouraged. Versus maybe markets such as North America and Western Europe to a certain extent, where individuals tend to see WhatsApp as a personal thing and maybe SMS, email as a business thing. So I think there was a lot of kind of question marks around where consumers want to be, and that first of all, again, when we'll pick up into the progress messaging and what's the right thing for a business to do. Of course, that does have the benefit of there's only one player in the game. Ultimately, Meta makes the decisions about how this channel is operated and how it's supported and how it's priced. Absolutely, with considerations what it can and can't do in certain markets. But so for example, we see certainly in recent weeks and days, really aggressive pricing and push on utility messaging. Really, I would suggest looking at that SMS space, helping, is there an opportunity for it to take some of that market? Showing there is saying they need before RBM takes it. So I think it's, there's a number of changes around Meta's approach across different markets. It's quite a fluid market, fluid ecosystem. At the same time as there is that fluidity around RCS, RBM, and other channels. So I think kind of all goes into that kind of comment from earlier, that melting pot of what 2025 is going to look like. I think it's going to look really interesting and hard to predict what we'll be talking about this time next year.
Yeah. If you are a bit of a sad geek, I would say, like me, this is the exciting part. I mean, the strategic position changes, pricing, the things are really, these next few months will determine a lot of the things we're going to see in the future. So I'm here as a spectator, and it's a great spectator sport. It's the Olympics of messaging, I should say, is coming up. But referring back to my career, I think one of the first things that I ended up doing, well, the second or third in my career in telecom probably, was collecting feedback on SMS from different people. And that was in 1999 or 98, I don't remember. But that's the first time that I heard that SMS was going to die. And that's already was 26 years ago. I have heard SMS is going to be, not doing so well every 2 years since. Now, there are some real concerns right now. So let's talk about that. SMS, with 20% reduction in volumes, and that's Juniper research. And they're on some of their research from great values and great volumes, but still a reduction. Significant, or how true is that for you? Is SMS in rude health?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. As you say, it's one that's been debated for decades, let alone recent years. So yeah, SMS is dead. Well, we have SMS maybe is the kind of repeating phrase. Is it in rude health? I think it will be difficult. It'd be hard to say it's flourishing. But equally, it will be very hard to say that it's going anywhere fast. In reality, what SMS is that familiar channel, that ubiquitous channel that is always there, and for the foreseeable future will always. I think there's absolutely question marks around, as we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, about where it can go, how it can evolve, and RBM is very much positioned as the evolution of SMS in many cases. And there will be a lot of business will look to kind of stack up their messaging. But also, as kind of touched on earlier, an awful lot of the messaging is a hygiene factor for brands. It's HTTPs, it's notifications. So fundamentally, it's actually not their core business. It's ancillary to their core business. So when you look at that as a brand, I think we in the industry need to do this a lot more, put ourselves in the business issues and say, why should we or what should we? If it isn't broke, they're going to need to fix it. And particularly when cost is a consideration, when the utility that SMS brings is ultimately the driving factor. I need to send a notification. Absolutely. If that can be done via a branded channel, whether it be RCS or WhatsApp or another channel, then fantastic. But if it not being so branded is not an issue, then what's the motivation to move away from the channel? So SMS is absolutely going to be here for a long time to stay. I have absolutely no doubts about it. If you look at it, as we would, at Infobip, look at it from a global perspective rather than maybe in certain markets, we also need to recognise that in developing markets where the prevalence of smartphones is far, far lower, where the availability of mobile data, Wi-Fi is very, very limited as well. In many cases, this is the only channel that can be used. And that's not going to change in the near future, right? So, the volume of messaging will always be there, for certain use cases. What's important for us as a business and to support, the brands and partners we work with is understanding where there's benefit in evolving the current messaging or where there's benefit in bringing in new types of messaging, whether it be from other non-mobile channels, for example. So I think SOS is, yes, in rude health. You touched on the question there in terms of kind of the reduction in volumes, and we need to be kind of open and upfront about the fact that some of those SMS volumes are not valid SMS. There's actually, we know there's fraudulent activity at play. So what degree of artificially inflated traffic or fraudulent traffic is there? And actually, where we see traffic migrate from SMS into another channel, you would typically see a reduction because of the removal of those bad actors or that bad traffic from the ecosystem. But that's not a bad thing. I think that absolutely has to be recognised as a positive thing for the industry because we need to ensure there's trust, accountability, and confidence in the channel. But at the very kind of, when you boil it down to kind of the nuts and bolts, as I touched on earlier, SMS will always be needed, even if it's only ever available to our rich channels. And we will always, ultimately, as a business, you want to get your message to the consumer. And so if it can't be delivered via one channel, can it be delivered via another, and whether we like it or not, and it's going to be there. So it's going to be there to stay for quite a while. SMS is that one common denominator.
So you're touching on an interesting topic, and not just for SMS potentially, but whatever concerns you're a product owner. What keeps you awake and say, in future we need to make sure the products do not do, or
I think there's taking a view from a more kind of ecosystem perspective than an internal CPaaS or SaaS product perspective, looking at kind of messaging channels. I think there's probably three areas that can only help the growth of the channels and brand adoption of those: standardization, stability, and security. I worked with the creative director. He loved things in threes that had the same initials, so I worked really hard on thinking about that. Standardization is hugely important, and I touched on that earlier regarding the OTT chat benefits of taking WhatsApp as an example, Meta being the owner of that channel, is they drive that standardization. So yes, there will be market variations, but pricing models consistent across markets. For example, even if the price points may vary. That's hugely important. Historically, looking at RBM, that wasn't the case. Carriers had applied different models, different approaches to single message versus conversational messaging, session-based pricing, and different models there. And that adds confusion, but also adds complexity to the ecosystem. For the likes of ourselves, which invariably then ends up being applied down the side into the ecosystem. So that standardized approach to pricing structure, message formats, and within a given market is hugely important, because that enables it removes question marks and removes the complexity. So that's so first one. So all the stability, and that's from a product perspective. What are SLAs? How do we make sure we're able to deliver the volume of messaging effectively and accurately? But also stability in terms of the changes in the ecosystem itself. We've been through a period of a number of changes from kind of meta pricing into how they're looking at adapting delivery of marketing messages, and I touched on earlier just then about how carriers are changing their pricing for RBM. As things change, ultimately that again results in changes that need to be applied down the line, whether that makes the tier one operators, our partners, and ultimately into brands. So the more a brand at business are able to have confidence in the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 months, that they're not going to have to make product changes, just really focus on go-to-market solutions, the better. Because of course, if the focus is internally on adapting a product to suit changing from a provider, that invariably takes effort away from those go-to-market solutions or activations. And then the final one is a touch on security. We talked a little bit earlier about kind of fraudulent traffic, artificially inflated traffic. But ensuring that the messaging channels can carry enterprises' confidence and trust, one, but also consumers' confidence and trust and reassurance, two. That's hugely important, because without that, it makes whichever channel you're using irrelevant. Consumers don't trust it, brands don't trust it, it won't be usable. So I think security, and that's an area that is commonly asked, certainly in recent months, as brands are increasingly looking to what are their options away from SMS.
I'll do a little advertising for the entire ecosystem and not just MEF, and I think that's where there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and has started, which is a positive thing. More needed. So we'll definitely be here listening to all of you, including Dave, and everybody else who's got ideas on how to do that. So big challenges for the industry. What about the challenges for the enterprises, which, as you highlighted, the center, so to speak, the one that are using and paid for this medium? I say that it's great to see the flourishing of what we just discussed. You've got SMS, you've got RCS, you've got local flavors of OTT and WhatsApp more globally. How do you make sure that you make sense of all of that when you add, inbound, outbound, emails and everything else? Is it an omni-channel? Is it a single channel? Is it an enlightened channel? What's the right approach?
It's again, it's the kind of question that comes back time and time again. And the answer should always be there is no right approach. Because there are so many factors that are involved. And that's where, as a messaging provider, whether it be from a CPaaS or SaaS perspective, we need to ensure that we're providing all of the options. So not just that, able to provide advice or consultation in terms of what are the pros and cons of each of those options. What is right for a given business in a given vertical, in a given market, with a given use case to a given demographic. All of those variables will inform what is the right choice. But it might be that right choice is a single channel with a really single-minded, focused message. But it might be the right choice is actually an omni-channel approach, working with maybe 2 or 3 channels, which may include non-mobile, it may include email, it may include outbound call. Ultimately, we're in a world now where there's a plethora of options to businesses. So they have the opportunity to make sure they're choosing the right approach. And I think a word that I always kind of try and come back to is appropriateness. So what's the appropriate solution for a business and for a consumer? Now, there might be a priority placed on one versus the other. So, for example, looking at therapy for us, that wants to derive, that really does want to look at a conversational commerce experience. Well, absolutely then the priority has to be placed on what consumer experience is. Because ultimately that has to be really strong and efficient to drive those consumer sales. But if it's a business that's sending notifications, well, actually the priority and on a scale, then the priority is more on what's the cost of that messaging. Because ultimately it's about, as long as the message can be delivered, what's the price of that? So the priority applies to business requirements versus consumer requirements. There will be a bit of give and take there. But again, that goes back to appropriateness, given the use case, given the market, given the demographic, given the channel that wants to be used, etc. So I think, it's maybe sitting on the fence a little bit. But the honest answer is that there is no wrong answer. Speaking from my background, more working on the agency side, one of the first things we would frequently have businesses coming with a solution. It's saying we want to do X, we want to do Y. Back in the day, we want to build an app, of course. Everyone wants to build an app. But actually, the first question should be, well, actually, why and what are you trying to achieve? Once you understand what the brand is trying to achieve for themselves and for their consumers, then you can start to apply the logic to understand what is the right for them, given their budget, given their demographic, given their use case, etc.
Well, you mentioned your career, so I think it's a perfect intro to a bit of a reflection. And you have been for over 20 years working on the technical side, on the realization side, I should say, for some of those engagement digital marketing company. I'll mention some because I remember Pocket as being one of the early examples, and you worked there. Nokia Digital, the advertising platform. I think Movement was in there as well in DC. So you had a pretty wide experience. Now let's capitalize on that as you are here. For the last 20 years, what has happened really? What kind of big movement, what kind of vectors we have seen in this industry, in the engagement industry on mobile?
Yes, Steve. I mean, firstly, thank you for aging me. I'm quite happy you out yourself as being around in the 90s, but I'm not sure I appreciate you outing me so openly. But we'll live with that.
Everybody has to suffer the same.
Well, the first thing that's striking is there's still the same faces in the industry, albeit there's a lot more other faces than there used to be. I think it's really interesting because quite a lot has changed, but quite a lot is still the same. And I think that's those ground principles of mobile will never change. It ultimately is the device that's sat in a person's hand, and as such, it is the most personal device. Even more so now than it was back in the day. I remember, having a line in meetings with clients talking about, wallet, phone, keys. Well, actually now I leave the house, I don't take my wallet because I've got my phone. And there'll be a time when I don't take my keys because I've got my phone. So it is the most personal of devices, which I think is really important to recognise. That should always be kind of like a red line through any consideration. But I also remember when we back in through the 2000s, I'm sure you will as well. The year of mobile. It was, when is the year of mobile? What is the year of mobile? And then it kind of happened without anyone really noticing it. It kind of snuck up and overtook us, and we didn't even know there was a year of mobile. It just incrementally became, digital experiences incrementally became mobile. And then our time at the moment, we were working with some fantastic group of people, was that what we was initially set up as a mobile marketing agency, technology agnostic, but very much focused on delivering creative, user experience-led mobile experiences. Because there wasn't any in the space at the time. This was kind of the late kind of around the 2010s. There wasn't a true creative mobile agency. It's a lot of creative agencies who did a bit of mobile, and there was a lot of mobile technology agencies. There was no true creative mobile agency really focused on the user experience. But it was definitively mobile. But what we found, within 3, 4, 5 years, actually, we were a digital agency. And it wasn't because we evolved into becoming a digital agency. It was because it just evolved to become mobile. So the ecosystem shifted, not the businesses, which I think was really, really interesting. Ultimately, the ecosystem shifts because consumer behavior shifts. And consumer behavior shift from this screen that we're looking at now into the screen that was in the hand, more and more. What's changed? I don't think there's been seismic changes. Kind of going back to my previous point, I think there's just been that incremental iterative change. Consumers have moved more and more to the device in their hand, or in their pocket, or in their bag. And brands are more and more adapting to that. But ultimately, there is, and there always should be, that red line of what's the right consumer experience, what's the most appropriate way of delivering a message. And by that, I mean a kind of communication. It needn't be a SMS message and WhatsApp message, RCS message. What's the most appropriate way of delivering that interaction, that communication to a consumer in the best way, appropriate and user experience led? Is always led. I think that's where it's nice to see that consistency, because we're still talking about that now, and that was exactly what we were talking about in IoT.
So we still have a few more years of improvement and
some more than others, though.
Yeah. So it's still coming. You still have a job, which is a positive thing as well. Excitement in the industry. Well, and before I talk about the future again, and time, unfortunately, we are towards the end. But I'm going to try and squeeze one more, if not the last questions. And it's more for my own personal interest, because one of the things you've been doing in your career is also been for a while working in one of our sister associations for MEF, which was the DMA at the time, and I assume was a direct marketing association today.
Yes, yeah.
It's the Data and Marketing Association, the DMA. Now, you work there as an industry approach. Have things improved in terms of the quality, the care we look around in terms of best practices and so on in this market?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And I think that's it very much mirrors what I was kind of always talking about there in terms of the growth of or the evolution of digital back into the evolution of digital into mobile. Is that it's so much more significant for the industry. You touched on it was a mobile working group within the Direct Marketing Association, and so in the days, so for the earlier 2000s, it wasn't the kind of that strength of industry recognition for the channel. There actually was the likes of the MMA, the Mobile Marketing Association, of course, NEF and previous guys has been around, but there's always that challenge in terms of where they're sitting. So as I say, this was a subgroup within the Direct Marketing Association, because everything was still direct marketing focused, albeit it's, as you kind of touched on, it's changed now to from a base perspective. But if you look now at the kind of without kind of pushing it too much back to you guys, if you look at the size of an industry body such as the MEF, you look at the significance of the events, you look at the kind of businesses that are members of MEF and pay heed to what the MEF and its working groups are saying, and the distribution of its workouts and the breadth of it, the significance that's applied now. I mean, I would put the question back to you, right? I mean, I think, where was MEF in that position now than it was 10 years ago. What's changed? I mean, I think it's the recognition of the significance of the channel is only reflected by those kind of industry bodies that support it.
Great way to finish off, I think, on those positive words for the ecosystem as a whole. So it's time to say thank you to Dave Boddington for all the interesting things as you managed to talk to us just in the heat of the development of RCS, RBM, WhatsApp, and everything else. So, Dave, thanks for sharing your perspective with us. I hope we're going to be seeing soon, and if not, catching up on the next chapter on intelligent communications and intelligent messaging, as we'll hear from you as well.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. This episode is supported by Infobip, a leader in omnichannel communication, helping businesses connect with customers across SMS, email, voice, and chat apps. Stay tuned, stay connected, and join us next time for more expert insights and discussions.